Okay, so as Adam alluded to, so we have our member Scott Murdock, who's going to be presenting some of his own research and efforts, documentation that he's done specifically on thin shell concrete. Scott has given some presentations with us before, and he is a very knowledgeable person when it comes to this type of construction. So we really appreciate him taking the time to spend with us and also to share his own independent work that he's been doing. So this is the third installment. You'll find it on YouTube soon, I'm sure. Um, and as Adam mentioned, we have uploaded some of his past presentations with us too. So if this really piques your interest and you see some amazing structures that you want to find out more about, we have those videos online. I'll let Scott dive into the presentation and tell us more about exactly what he's going to be talking about. But a little bit about Scott is that he has studied buildings for decades, both professionally and as a hobby. His architectural history interests started with 20th century military buildings, but his current passion is thin shell concrete construction. He spends much of his time creating a nationwide database of thin shell concrete and visiting as many examples as possible. He does have a website where he has his findings and the research he's conducted. So we do have that link. So if any of you want that, he might have it in his presentation as well. But it's definitely worth checking out. And I thought it was fun that he also included that when he's not researching thin shell concrete, he's probably watching a NASCAR race or a 1940s mystery movie.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm always excited when I get to talk concrete with people who will actually listen. I've I've bored a lot of strangers by walking into their building and telling them about their roof, and most people don't care. So this is a treat for me. Um, this presentation, if you see anything you like, it's already available on my website. You can download it. I clicked publish on that before I came here. So, and any of the buildings I show you tonight, they are also on my website, um, and I list references on my website. So every journal article, newspaper, whatever I use to get that information, that citation is there for you if you're interested. So, no,
Actually, you just use the mouse arrow to tap on the presentation. I now see it.
there we go. So, for those that are new to the subject of thin shell, it's concrete that's relatively thin compared to the distance it's covering. And it is strengthened through either curves or folds so that as a given amount of concrete can cover more area than a thicker slab of flat concrete. That's the basic idea. And the cool thing is it combines support and enclosure in one thing. So you've got a concrete roof. You don't have this, intense network of beams and rafters and purlins and everything else holding up sheathing, which then holds up shingles. You've got concrete doing most of that work. You still have to waterproof it, and that's been the downfall of many a building because they didn't keep a good seal on it and it leaked and they get torn down. So that's the basic idea in a nutshell. Seeing examples, I think, will really just bring it to life. Now, modernism didn't cause thin shell concrete to happen, nor did thin shell concrete cause modernism to happen. But for me and Docomomo, it's a lucky matter of good timing that brings us together to share this stuff. Because the timing was pretty good. Now, my focus, I do spend a lot of time on this subject, believe it or not. One of my main focuses is collecting information to build a database nationwide of every thin shell structure that I can account for. So right now, and these numbers are already out of date. I put these up about a month ago from a database query at that time. So about 2,100 in the US. I've already bumped that up to about 2,300 that I know of. And those are confirmed ones. Either visual inspection or photographs that are close enough to prove that it's concrete, or through articles that describe it. But there's hundreds of others that I have listed as suspects. From a distance, they look like thin shell concrete, but until I can get close enough or see better photographs, I won't know if that might be a stress skin plywood folded plate, or it might be a wooden dome. There's a lot of the counterfeits, I call them. And I do get out and visit. I've photographed almost 500 shells in person. A lot more to go. And I feel like I'm in a race against time. Every year, I have at least one thin shell that I've plotted my trip. I've looked on Google Earth, and yep, there it is. I get there in person, and I find a freshly seeded empty lot. And also, at least 2 or 3 times a year, I get back from a trip, I'm putting together my information, and I say, well, let me check again on Google Earth. And it's been demolished. In fact, one of the pictures I'll show you tonight was a school that was demolished just a couple of weeks after I was there. So I'm in a constant cycle. In the fall and winter, I'm gathering data for the states I plan to visit next year. Spring and summer, I'm engineering those trips, making those happen, getting the photos. I come back, got 1,000 photos to edit. And then before you know it, I'm starting again for next year. So building the databases and visiting sites is where I spend a lot of time on this effort. I have helpers. Once or twice a year, I'll get an email from either Bree or Kimber or Adam saying, hey, do you know about this one? Sometimes I do, and sometimes it's something I'm completely unaware of, so I add it to the list and start digging and incorporate it into the database. And this has happened more than once. My wife, Debbie, we've been traveling. We go to a distant city. We show up at the building I've identified. I photograph it. We get back in the car. I breathe a sigh of relief. And Debbie says, well, sweetheart, aren't we going to photograph that one? And she points at another thin shell building a half block away that I knew nothing about. She's done that a couple of times. So I do appreciate all the help. And what I've done for tonight, I kept it down to 20 buildings to show you, just so we're not here till midnight, because I usually go to sleep at 9 p.m. And I'd prefer not to be up here when that happens. And for tonight, I put them in groupings based on the basic shape, starting with barrel vaults, that nice rounded arch. And I call it the long and short of it. Play on words there, because barrel vaults to engineers, there's short barrels, there's long barrels, and there's even intermediate barrels. So that's my attempt at thin shell humor there. First building, here we go. This one's down in Colorado Springs. These are long barrel shells. You can kind of get that indication there. The width of that arched opening is much, much smaller than the distance of the shell. Long barrel. This one is possibly demolished or about to be demolished, getting its neighbor. So I was happy to get out there about a year or so ago and get some pictures. So if you're ever down in Colorado Springs by Colorado College, take a look and see if anything's left.
I feel like the last time I was down there, that was still there, but it's been a while.
And when known, I've sprinkled up either builders, architects, engineers, things that I've found out.
Scott, do you know how many pieces would have been potentially put to form that,
Gosh, what's under more?
the actual
barrel vault, how many pieces they would have actually connected together? Do you have any idea where the span of each one of those would have been?
Yeah, we do it again, Josh.
I'm not sure if I have them on my webpage or not.
So I'd be curious on one that was what the span would have been. Did they, how many put together of that?
Yeah, they're about 15, 20 feet wide. And I think there's like 4 or 5 in a row on this building.
Mm-hmm.
And when they built these, imagine the formwork it would take to pour that or place that concrete on. I usually say pour because that's what the engineers in the 50s and 60s usually said. I get corrected. We place concrete, we don't pour it. But times change. An immense wooden formwork. And in a case like this, they probably had one formwork, put it in place, put the concrete on that first one, let it cure enough, lowered that formwork, repositioned it for the next one. That was a huge way to save money on a thin shell concrete job. It's by reusing your formwork multiple times. And that was always one of the big criticisms of thin shell is, well, you thin shell guys, you're building everything twice. First you build it in wood, then you build it in concrete on top of the wood, and then you demolish the wood. So that was always a criticism levied at the proponents of thin shell.
This might be a stupid question, but how thin is thin shell?
Typically between about 3 and 5 inches. And whenever I find that tidbit, I will put it on my website. I definitely keep track of that. The thinnest I have found in the United States is 2 inches. And it was on a motel in Florida, the Warm Mineral Springs. And we stayed there once and they left a stepladder out and about. So I was able to hear inches. Sir, you're not supposed to stay.
Anne says in the chat she thinks it's still there. She will check.
Cool. And although I hate the potential of demolition, I do love it when the structure is exposed like that. Because
Yes.
that is just pure structural honesty right there. What you see is what's holding it up. And I do love that kind of shot. Okay, on down.
Right. Maybe it's because we were messing.
You'll see slide next door to the previous building. And this one was a natatorium. Not sure if this one has a fate awaiting it or if it's continuing on. Maybe we'll hear back. But very similar in design.
Quick question.
Yes.
When buildings are side by side like that, would it be common for them to use the same form?
If the shells were the same size, quite possibly. I don't recall if these were built at the same time or if they were off by enough time that they might have, taken their formwork away. But you'll read reports of, yeah, we were able to reuse the forms 5 times or 7 times or whatever. So they definitely tried to get their money's worth out of all that woodwork that was assembled. And what I appreciate too here is they didn't just keep it as elemental as they could have. They made the extra effort to tuck that in a little bit, curve it out a little bit, just add that little detail.
Even the drip edge along the top left, so it doesn't just get, these streaks from water coming down.
Right. And that is a common problem on these outside little winglets, I call them, of barrel vaults and folded plates. And sometimes from a distance, I can just tell by the water staining and little bits of rust that are leaching out. Oh yeah, it's concrete. But I did like that extra detail they put in there. Yeah, moving up north a little bit to Fort Collins. This gem is tucked away at CSU's water research area. So it's kind of off the beaten path, but well worth the drive. Now, this is an interesting building because the bulk of it is covered by these long barrel shells. Look what we have in the upper right over the front entrance. Short barrel.
So I have a question. So in the V of the scallops, water would pool. It was sealed well enough against that, or
Drainage is a constant battle with these kind of roofs. And sometimes you can see either original drain spouts off the end. I see a lot of cases where they have more recently punched a hole up in that V and put in a more modern downspout. Yeah, drainage is always a concern. And I've seen different ways of handling it. In fact,
I was gonna say, you can see the gutters on this lower one.
yes. How awkward and ungainly those drains look. You have that beautiful shell there. So here we have the long and the short of it in one building.
Is that by the ag? I feel like I remember seeing this building. Is this out by their agricultural studies center too? I think it is.
I think so.
Okay.
It-
I do remember that building.
North edge of town, out to the west a little way. Okay, Greeley. Now this company, Hensel Phelps, they build a lot of fin shells in Colorado. And in this case, they built one for their own use as a warehouse. It's kind of run of the mill standard, but this stuff was created to be utilitarian. We love the beauty of it, that it can be, but it was built to be a cheap way to cover a lot of space with something that was fireproof. It used to be cheap to build when labor costs were low compared to the cost of materials. So this is a very utilitarian example. Not a lot of extra cuts or decorations. It's very straightforward.
on the edge there with the little wing up,
Mhm.
is that on all of them? And what purpose is it?
It's on most. And what it does is provides that extra stiffening. To end the vault right there at the edge, it might tend to want to, push and slide and be uneven. So turning it up, and actually what it kind of does is it proves the usefulness of a folded plate. So people that tell me folded plates are a different thing, you shouldn't talk about them and shells at the same time. Well, I think you should. Because we're seeing the benefit of that fold and giving out extra strength at the edge of the building there. So it is very common. And I was kind of surprised to see the lack of it.
On that side.
Yeah.
It was knocked off or cut off.
Well, if it was, they did a clean work of it. So a very utilitarian one up in Greeley. Now, if you're up north in Fort Collins, it's not far to get to the port. There's a little spot on the road by a big cement plant, Botcher Cement Plant. And this was Ideal Cement Company's exploration department. Guys that did the mapping and the going out to find, resources for the right sand or the cement. It was, I guess, a big business since they needed their own department and a fancy building to do it from. Again, it's fairly small. They tried to jazz it up a little bit to make it look nice. But a utilitarian building that, unless you were visiting the cement plant for some reason, you'd probably never know it was there. And Fisher and Fisher of Denver were the architects there. That name rings a bell.
Do you think that front entrance was put on later? Or do you think it was there?
That's in the earliest photos I've seen of it from the time.
It's interesting. They're like, no, we're just gonna keep the barrel vault and just gonna put this right in front of it.
Of course, I doubt they had the air conditioning in it.
No, that wouldn't have top
That
of it.
probably came later. Calm down from the excitement of barrel vaults. And we can look at a few domes, or shells of revolution, as the engineers call them. Okay, so you're taking a line, typically a curved line, and rotating it to get the shape. Now this one is very late for thin shell work, 1979. It's in Colorado Springs. When I went there, it was a mid-century modern secondhand shop. I bought a few knickknacks there. It has recently turned into a marijuana shop. So I'm lucky I visited when I did. Now this one is interesting. I usually don't look at anything made this late, but this dome fascinates me because it's a concrete dome on a portion of a dome or a bowl. Now, typically when that's done, there is a very giant, very strong tension ring built around it at that point.
Yeah.
Because it's going to want to squash itself out.
Doesn't have a door cut in it.
Yeah. Exactly. So I don't know who built this, who designed it. I tapped on it with my inspection hammer just to make sure it wasn't just foam or something, and it is concrete. So I'm guessing from what I've read that if we saw the drawings or if we x-rayed this building, we'd see very amounts of extra rebar in this area. And there's probably a reinforced concrete tie beam running right underneath there, just holding those edges in. Because that type of construction, you don't normally see a tenth of a dome chopped out in that critical area. So the guy that worked there was just fascinated with my fascination for
Do you think there could be any sort of a ring around inside that's holding it on the inside of where you can actually see where it transitions from the top to the bottom?
I suspect you can see how it's a little bit widened there.
Yeah, that's what.
And so I suspect there's a lot more rebar in there than we would see if it was just a plain simple dome
Oh, yeah.
that ended. So if they ever demolish that one, I want to be there with a camera to document the remains. I'll do a post-mortem right on the site.
Hopefully they don't demolish it anytime soon.
I hope not.
Hopefully the weed store keeps it open.
Somebody on the chat is asking if this one was formed by placing the concrete in an inflated rubber bladder.
I don't know any details about the construction of this one. The ones I've seen that were air inflated, I've never seen one that went out and then up and in. So I don't know if that would be feasible, but I'd love to find out the history for sure and how they built this one, because it's very unusual. So that's a fun one. And we have a trio of very cool all concrete houses in Denver, designed by Eugene Groves. Each of those three houses has a very cool, small concrete dome over the front row. 1932 is the year. Now, if you pick up an engineering textbook and read about thin shell concrete, they'll tell you it came to America in 1934 at the hand of engineer Anton Tedesco. They won't mention that anything thin had ever been built out of concrete before. We have an example right here in Denver. 2 years before Anton Tedesco came to the US, some guy named Eugene Groves in Denver, Colorado, built very thin concrete dome on houses. And there's probably a dozen examples around the country I've stumbled across of thin shell concrete built before 1934. Eventually, I want to put them all together and talk about them and call it, before Tedesco, thin shell prior to. So I find these houses interesting for that reason. They're also fascinating because they are literally all concrete. Even the kitchen cabinets and doors are concrete.
Yeah.
So if you ever see one pop up in a tour, it's well worth the experience.
There's someone who lives in a Hornbein house that is an expert on him, and I feel like I should connect the two of you because he's given talks. I have an all concrete house right now that I have listed that I'd be very curious. I should poke your brain about. I didn't think about it, but I'll send it to you later.
Okay. Yeah.
But
And luckily, they had some original drawings at this, not this house tour, but the Nordland house, the next one I want to show you. So I was able, you can tell that was shot on a phone in the sun. I'm trying to shield the drawing and take a picture of it. But the drawings confirm that, that is approximately, 2.5, 3-inch-ish dome. There's a separate plaster dome underneath it. But if I bought that house, I would be drilling test holes, measuring the thickness, and then repairing them afterwards.
this one is a landmark. So
Okay, good. Holland House. Here's another one, and this one was a tour a couple years ago. I tried to respect their privacy in their living room. You can see why that shot's angled up to just capture the roof. And again, he's like, "That's what you're interested in? All the cool features in this house, and you're peeking out the window to look at the roof?" So it's a fascinating little dome.
So how the weatherproofing is on these?
It's a good question. I don't know.
Do you think they wanted to do this because it is so pretty from the inside? Is that why?
That's certainly a fair guess. I don't know Eugene Grove's motives. And this one was a few years later, 1935. Still pretty darn early. And then the Sherman House. And again, a drawing showing the concrete roof and a plaster roof worked right under it. Wow. So an interesting trio of very early concrete domes. A little more traditional. Here we have a school with multiple domed buildings up in Greeley. And the architects, John Shaver and his company, they built a lot of schools. Kansas, Oklahoma, Colorado, and elsewhere. It's hard to find written sources that talk about some of their work being concrete, because when Shaver and his folks talked about their buildings, they were all about the efficiency of the design as a school. Yeah, they were trendsetters on a lot of school designs. So I'll read this, 3-page interview with Mr. Shaver, hoping he'll talk about the structural engineering, and all he talks about is the layout and the classrooms and all those things. So he used concrete, had it used, but didn't really think it was notable enough to talk about in the interviews. It wasn't a selling point to him. He wanted to sell you on how his school was going to be the best one for your children in your town. And luckily, this one is still standing. Hyperbolic paraboloids. One of our favorite shapes, I'm sure. And earlier this year, I was at a library in Washington State with a hyperbolic paraboloid roof. And I wanted to shoot inside. So I walked in, talked to the librarian, and said, "Do you mind if I take some pictures of your roof? I won't bother anybody. I won't include anybody in your pictures." She's like, "Go ahead." Hey, and she called over her coworker. "He's interested in the roof." And this other lady came over and she's like, "Yeah, it's called a it's a long, funny name. I said, hyperbolic paraboloid." She goes, "Yes." So that is a doubly curved surface. And the easiest example to get that doubly curved surface in your head is a Pringles chip. It's got that saddle shape. Get a curve that way and a curve that way. Also called a warped shape. And yeah, I love these things. Now this school in Greeley is kind of weird because not only does it have concrete hyperbolic paraboloid roof panels, they're all up with cables as well. So you've got just two for the price of one when you're looking for interesting engineering techniques. What I don't know is, did they actually find that extra cable support to be necessary in the design? Or was it a way to make it look more interesting? Or did the client say, "Oh, I don't know if I feel safe under that concrete"? Don't know those answers, but it would be fun to go back into the design meetings and find out the rationale. But it's really cool. The only other example that I've seen that used cables to hold up thin shelves is a bowling alley in Oklahoma. Really? And it's got cable supports on barrel vaults. So very unusual. It's still standing, as far as I know.
It almost looks like a maple on top of each other.
Yeah. And again, this was the work of Shaver and Associates. Did they brag about this? No, apparently not. Now, here's a sad story. This is also Greeley. The scaffolding is ominous. And sure enough, they were remediating asbestos at the time I took these photographs through the scaffolding. And within a few weeks, the building was gone. But it had really cool pyramidal type shapes on the roof. If I have any more details, they'll be on my website. I forget if these were 4 or 5 sided. Some of them were 4-sided pyramids. Sometimes they went with 5-sided. Very creative. And there's that Lemke Construction Company of Colorado Springs. They also built a lot of shells in Colorado. Those folks and the Hensel Phelps that we saw earlier, I think those are the 2 companies I've seen do the most shells in Colorado.
It's funny that they were doing all that in Hensel Phelps' backyard.
Yeah, yeah. So again, I would have liked to get a better view, but wasn't to be. I did go back intentionally a few weeks later in the hopes of getting closer. But again, gee, here's an empty lot that's just been seeded. Wow, this is a nice one. This is one that Adam pointed out to me. And once I knew where it was, I eventually tracked out and found out whose house it was. And Obie Wagner, that's a name I know some of you are familiar with. And what's fascinating about this, you've got 2 separate hyperbolic paraboloid roofs. They're not evenly lined up. They're slightly askew from each other. And you can kind of see that
Is
with
that
the
for
eye
drainage?
angles. I don't know.
My biggest question now, it says I've currently had to deal with too many roofs lately, is I'd be curious if they would make you add insulation to a thin shell concrete roof with the new code that we're experiencing, and how in the heck you would add polyiso on top of that and build it out with roof.
Spring it blood.
You would spray it?
I see a lot of roofs that have had insulation added. Nice crisp 3-inch roof with like 4 or 5 inches of lumpy, uneven insulation on top of it. It's very unattractive. And this, I'd like to get closer to this because that's a very thin piece of concrete up here. I mean, I'd estimate like 2.5, 3 tops, but just eyeballing it, it just looks really thin. I didn't dare go walking up to the house with a tape measure. And this one, it's easy to see from the road, but you don't get much of a view. Those are pretty much the only 2 angles you could see from the public right away. Now, this little gem is another one that Adam told me about. Innocuous little strip mall in Littleton. You look in the windows and see these gigantic inverted umbrella concrete shells.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Just discovered that because my kids take music lessons next door. They were renovating the space for a new brewery. And I looked in the window and was like, check that out.
I wonder if it was the same person who did the umbrellas on Littleton Boulevard at that time.
Yes. Good question.
Because they were just that.
So in your other last presentation that I watched on YouTube, so that usually there's drainage in these
Yes.
kinds of columns.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, would it just because that I think in the hotel in Florida, the motel, wasn't that the way it worked?
Yes.
So is there like a drainage system under there, or does it just go into the dirt or something? Like, are there pipes under there, do you imagine?
Typically, it's a network of pipes to feed it to whatever their outflow is for the property. Yeah, because you've got this giant cup essentially. And if you don't keep those drains clean, you're going to have a problem. Swimming pools. And when I look at aerial photos of this type of roof, the inverted umbrellas, sometimes you can see, okay, here's 16 umbrellas. Oh, that one's clogged. And you can just tell from the aerial sometimes that one is filled up with water or has been, and there's debris. So yeah,
So that on the roof, it has that on the roof going in, or is
on the top surface of that concrete, and these are, probably 4 inches or so thick, right in the center, there's a drain pipe going straight down. And, they put the standard little cap on it with some filtration in it. But if you don't get up there and check those things.
Do you tend to see with this type of structure, like it looks like the ceiling gets pretty low by those columns? So I guess typically do we see this with like storage facilities, or it kind of reminds me of like mushroom columns where I've seen those in a lot of industrial settings. Is this kind of similar? I can't imagine. It's very like obviously a very unique shape, but it just makes me think there has to be a specific function for that kind of.
It does feel very ominous, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Feels like a parting
Not a flame.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the case of this building, it's interesting too because from the outside, you can't tell that they're there at all. So I was like, what was the big idea?
Right.
And also, it's not consistent through the entire strip. So I don't know if the strip had been added on to at some point, but this is the end of the strip. And all the units south of it don't have this detail.
This was not the cheapest way to build this. It was attention. I mean, look at the exterior, right? I'm sure this was probably this beautiful grid of columns that look like trees. And I bet that whole exterior elevation was glass. Yeah, everything. All the way to the top, all the way to the bottom. This thing's lit at night. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Do we know what it
What
was?
if it's like an outdoor space when it was built?
Well, I'm also wondering if it was like an outdoor space or a parking garage, or if it was part of. Where is this one, Adam?
I don't.
It's zero.
Look at the level of finish that's on the underside of
I
that.
almost wonder if there was something made to be like the end cap to all the ones that they had on Littleton Boulevard. It went in right around that time.
The ones on Littleton Boulevard were designed by Marvin Hatami.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Scott has to take notes.
Thank you, Alan.
It does look like it would have been a park or a parking garage or something else, and then they almost encapsulated it in a inclusive idea.
I'd love to find out more. You ever see anything on it? Let me know. But it does give us a good close view of one of these umbrellas. And when the hyperbolic paraboloids are used, one of the common ways is to arrange them 4 panels with a central column, just joined at those edges. And then depending on how they're oriented, you can get the inverted umbrella. You can get them where they come down from the column in a mushroom shape. Or you can, tilt them different ways. You can sometimes see them with 4 gables or the 4 corners flying up in 4 directions. So just by rearranging those panels based on their, where the high points and low points are, you can do a lot of different things with it.
And in your previous talk with the rest stop features, they can stand the load too.
Yes, yes. And these were commonly prefabricated and available. I was just reading today about a company in Florida, West Coast Shells, in stock, prefabricated, 14 by 14, 16 by 16. They carried it, they had in their yard ready to take to your job site, 35 by 35 feet mushroom inverted zebra shells.
Right? How would you ship something that large?
Like by train, like via
Be a chore.
But then how would it get to the work site on, like, imagine trying to put that on a semi.
Well, this company was in Sarasota, and I think they were counting on the boom right in their local area. But yeah, carrying something that huge to a job site. They did also have portable forms for these type of shells.
That almost makes more sense.
Yeah, and like for the highway rest areas, I've read where, they dragged in their forms, unhooked them from the truck, set them up, poured one half the umbrella, and then came back in a few days, moved the forms to the other side or the other half. So our first inverted umbrellas of the night. Yeah. This is just a really nice looking building. Even if you don't like concrete, it's just a nice looking building. But for me, again, look at those beautiful inverted umbrella shells. And this was built with the intention that it was a prototype of future Mr. Steak restaurants.
Funny enough, the Mr. Steak mascot made it on its way onto Facebook Marketplace, and I was trying to get the museum or someone to buy. I saw it, but I was like, it has to be from this building.
Oh my gosh.
So they went to a rustic modern after this, by the way, which is why it ended up with the board and batten and the brick added later. Because this building didn't originally have that. It was a much cleaner facade originally with those umbrellas. I think the Littleton Museum has the old photos. I've seen them. It was
What's interesting thing about this one that at least I think I'm seeing it right and it's not a distortion is that these are not square. They're rectangles.
Mhm.
It's very, very nice set of umbrellas. And you can see also, looks like they added that metal trim. And it's quite possible that's because they put insulation on top of those shells. So imagine them in their original glory. They're they'd probably terminate just above that joint, I would think. So a delight when you're down in Littleton. Like I've mentioned, if you go back and look at engineering textbooks, which was one of the first sources I hit, I bought up every one I could find on eBay for about a year. I'm only missing a few because they're too expensive. Most textbooks on thin shell concrete include folded plates. Roll them right in, that's part of the family. I did find a few though that said folded plates are a separate technique, which will not be addressed here. So there was a view amongst some that they weren't to be considered in the same breath. Most do tend to include them, so I do. And in fact, when I go and I read the little blurbs in newspapers, according to the architect, they will frequently say, this building is built with a folded plate thin shell roof. Or a thin shell concrete folded plate roof. So frequently the architects and engineers are using those two terms in the same sentence to describe the same building. So I definitely include it. Now down in Alamosa, Adams State University has a few thin shell buildings. In fact, I'm showing you one tonight. We saw the other two just a couple of months ago on a trip, and I did not kind of rework this presentation to include those. But at some future meeting, I'll show you the other two. Now this one I don't know much about. The other two were more thoroughly documented in the newspapers of the time. About all I could find about this one is that I think the contract was led in early 1968. But I so far don't have an architect's name, engineer's name, builder's name for this one.
So what's going on in the lower right hand?
Yeah. Is that a reverse?
That's an interesting thing. I include that kind of for fun. What we have here are inverted pyramidal shapes. They're not hyperbolic paraboloids. They're just, flat panels forming that inverted pyramid. They did appear to me to be concrete. I couldn't get close enough to tap them with the hammer. And they do have the distinct lines, which I don't know if that was meant for decoration, because it doesn't seem to continue as a seam. So I found them interesting, but I really don't know too much about it.
If Tish in the chat is asking if you know what cross street this is at.
Not off the top of my head, but the address. Oh, I may just have it down to Adams State University on my website. So sorry, I don't. But this is the northernmost of the buildings we saw. And from the inside, you can get a nice view of those folded plates resting on the beam there. Fort Morgan. Those are some nice looking plates, aren't they? And I especially love down here. One corner is just a covering for the opening to their workshops and garage or whatever. But again, there's no guesswork at what the structure is in this building. They're showing it to you right there. Nice sturdy concrete columns, nice sturdy tie beam across there. You frequently see the tie beams with folded plates because, like a dome, they might want to spread out under their own weight. And again, we can see even at the end, instead of just cutting it off, you have that extra upturned fold to get that extra rigidity in there. So very nice. And it's nice to see that vintage glass work and metal work. And
That's interesting.
Yeah.
The school in Inglewood, I want to say that they did also a folded plate on the front of a school in Inglewood, if I'm trying to remember. Wheeler and Lewis. I know Lewis's grandson lives not far from me in Littleton. So their projects were a huge, huge number. I've wanted to put a presentation together just on them because they did so many.
You know about the H.W. Moore Equipment Company right off Colorado Boulevard and I-70?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a big one.
And there's a couple of those buildings over there.
There's-
Like,
It's by Tom Moore, and he did another big folded plate on South Broadway. I can't tell you exactly where.
Cool.
Was it the church on South Broadway?
I think it's a church. I think so. Yes.
Okay, it's probably that big.
There's the educational wing and then the chapel. Yeah, the vertical folded.
Yep,
It's,
that is that
it's,
one.
it's Tom Moore also.
Thanks, Alan.
And also, you know, the Zeckendorf Plaza hyperbolic paraboloid initial consultation was done by Anton Tedesco.
Yes. Yep, he made his mark a few places around town.
And also, I don't know whether he did the Colorado, the Broadmoor Convention Center hyperbolic paraboloid.
The International Center, that was a Milo Ketchum.
Oh, that's right. I knew that. Mike Barrett told me about it.
You had said in your previous talk that the Zeckendorf Plaza one was the only hyperbolic paraboloid you were aware of that Tedesco did.
Yes. Whereas I know. Also, I don't know whether the hyperbolic paraboloids at the church on Alameda and University are concrete or not.
The little building.
The little building is.
Yeah, it is.
Where was that one?
Right before Cherry Creek.
Calgary.
The ones they just removed a lot of the stained glass.
It's the
On the east side as you're approaching Cherry Creek going north. Yeah.
it's only about as big as this room.
Okay. I'll check to see if I have that one.
A little bit bigger
Do
than
one of your last presentations. Okay.
It's probably just drawing a blank.
It's hard to keep track. Pretty nice looking plates again. It held up well.
in that drainage retrofit, as you mentioned.
Yeah, there we go. Here we have a hole in a drain pipe.
Do you think that would have been a retrofit though, or would that have been original inline gutter? Because it isn't.
I don't think that's a retrofit.
That's original. Look at the downspout.
Yeah. It's a round downspout for one thing, and the hole in the roof is very well detailed. Or retrofit, it wouldn't be.
And I like, you can see a little bit of crack on the corner of that concrete tip up there just to kind of prove it's real.
The last reefer was standing out at the edge.
They do like the shoddy work on the bell there.
It is a said.
Yeah.
This school always reminds me of the one that's right by Green Mountain too, that has the same kind of roof line, similar setup. I wonder if it's the same.
So that one's in Wheat Ridge. Across the Metroplex to Aurora. And this was just on an addition to an existing school. Ken White and Associates, they also did that massive warehouse complex out at the Federal Center with the vaults you can see from 3/4 mile down the road.
Fortunately, last I've heard, this school was likely threatened.
And you can tell one of my photographic techniques is what I call dawn patrol. Get out to a target either as the sun comes up, so you can get a few shots in that golden light before it breaks, and then get a couple of shadows off. Do that a lot in the cities when I don't want a lot of, commuter traffic in my way and stuff.
This one's definitely had a retrofitted flashing and such added to it as well.
Yeah, you can see how uneven it looks.
Would these have had a membrane on them originally, or was that just added after years of the concrete being exposed?
Almost always originally. The problem was there were so many membranes tried and discarded over the years. One big name was Hypolon. There are many others. And you find people advertising, we have the perfect coating for your thin shell roofs. But, did they last 50, 60 years? No. So coatings frequently had to be done over and over and over until they figured something out. And what makes me sad is when you stumble across a nice building like this and they've just given up and put shingles on it. In that more times than I like. But it happens. But yeah, concrete or not, the water is still your enemy. And this little gem is another one that Adam told me about.
So it's one of my favorites.
And again, it's one that I like because it's opened up and you can see the structure. You know exactly what's going on there.
It looks like rhyolite on the side.
That one's in Linwood.
And that's really cool.
I had a building occupant confront me one time and said, "What do you think you're doing out here?" I said, "I'm just trying to visualize the load path."
I like that they even detailed on this one though, that that's part of the structure is even detailed in itself underneath.
Yeah. And the only detraction to it is the cap that's put on there.
Monaco and to
And the address for this one will be on my website.
It's also interesting, Scott, that it's thickened at the bearing.
Yeah.
Yes, sure is. And that's something I don't see on plates as much as barrel bolts. But on some folded plates, you will see the distinctive thickening. Just to make it much stronger right there where it's putting the weight.
It almost reminds me of the folded plate that's on, what is it, on Manitou, Adam? That has just that little tiny one that's on that end house right there. It reminds me a lot of that one detailing.
I don't think that one's concrete.
No, I think that one's friends.
So this is a little private club, swimming club, I think it is. But the day I went there, they were doing some kind of construction work and it wide open. Nobody cared. So that's all the buildings for tonight. Didn't want to put anybody to sleep, just give you a little, little snippets to get you interested. But I do want to give a couple of shout outs. We always compare notes on what websites do you use? Where do you go?
I know what building.
So I wanted to share just a couple with you.
Oh,
Yeah, see, this is familiar to some folks. Roadside architecture. Deborah Seltzer runs this site. She is a machine, travels solid for a couple months every summer, photographing almost every building in her path, categorizing it in numerous ways on her website. So one of my fall rituals is to devote, I don't know, maybe 50 to 100 hours, state by state, going through her mid-century modern section, looking for buildings that are or could look like they might be thin shell concrete. And so far this year, I've gone through about, I'd say 15 or 20 states and added about 100 to 120 new buildings to my database to check out because they sure look like they're concrete. So yeah, fascinating resource.
One thing that you may not be aware of is when Temple Emmanuel was originally built in 1960 at 51 Grape Street, it had a huge folded plate concrete canopy in front. And when they added in 1988 a chapel to the side of that area, they took off that canopy and replaced it with a flat roof.
I did not know that. Thanks, Ellen.
And I have photographs of that if you're interested.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
So this is a great source for magazines, journals, everything from Architectural Forum, Architectural Record, Progressive Architecture, down to state AIA chapters, magazines, or newsletters.
How's the ultimate rabbit hole?
It's a big one. It's a big rabbit hole. I just went through their journals for AIA journals for the Iowa State chapter. Added about 20 buildings to my database. They had nice detail write-ups, concrete this, concrete that, thin shell this, thin shell that. So there's a lot on this website. Just brace yourself because it might take you a few hours before you can come up for air.
We
And this is a great online source for Colorado newspapers.
We have Rocky Mountain News in there now. Let me tell you, I've lost a lot of hours to it.
And my favorite new newspaper is one through here, Surveys Rocky Mountain
Yeah.
Journal.
They have so much.
It was only around for about 14 years, but it was
Yeah.
the whole newspaper focused on building and real estate. So a lot of everything from building permits to who's working for what firm to what's being built now. Great source.
Didn't you say, Alan, you knew the one who ran Surveys? I think you told us.
Well, I know his daughter, Clay Survey. She ran the newspaper till she sold it.
So great source here.
I want to talk about how many hours I've spent in that list.
Well, I downloaded all the survey journals so I could just search them on my own hard drive.
I subscribed to it for a long time.
You still have those copies, Alan?
Nope. They're gone. They're gone.
Some of their scans are a little blurry, hard to read. But that's a great source. The one thing I can't find here is Denver Post.
They just started Rocky Mountain News, so maybe we'll get the Denver Post. And I also need the Littleton Independent really badly.
The Denver Public Library just put the Post on their digital archive.
Oh,
So
did
they
they?
do have that now. Like Adam and I,
all totally scan them.
yeah, Adam and I both were just there, and that was like one of their big announcements.
I was like, into that.
Yes, I could tell you how to get there.
Yeah.
All right. That'll be a big help. So just wanted to share that with you. Now, at this point, I don't know if you need to conclude the meeting or if we can take questions.
Questions.
Yes. Usually when I talk concrete to people, I'm going, wait, listen to my head. There's more.
Do we know? I feel like I can't remember if we talked about this last time. Is the Sternberg buildings are over by DU that are the folded plate? Are those thin shell or are those?
For Dio, the Parliament Hall.
I want to say so.
big
Yeah.
dorm, like free facilities. Yeah, those are concrete.
Also, because and then did you figure out if his office building on Littleton Boulevard, if that folded plate, if that one is?
Courthouse building.
Mhm.
That one appears to be wood.
Okay.
Yeah, I was up on their fire escape one day, looking as close as I could get, and I could see what it looked like. Sheet of paint on wood.
Okay.
Wait, sir.
The much maligned and not at all missed King County Multi-Purpose Dome Stadium in Seattle, aka the King Dome,
Kingdom.
which went up. I watched it go up and I watched it go down.
Oh my gosh.
Nobody cried. Because I mean, it was an engineering. I mean, it was, you know,
Yeah.
slices of pie. It's how
Yeah.
you built it. Concrete roof. They had a problem with the coating because it looked like raw concrete. I'm sure it wasn't. But then several years later, they put this white coating on all these various sections, and of course, it got out. You know, and getting people to go indoors in Seattle in the summer is a hard sell, especially when you got a team like the Seattle Mariners who rarely won. But it was, I don't know, does that qualify as thin shell? I mean, it's all concrete. That's still, yeah, you know,
And to my knowledge, it's the largest thin shell concrete dome ever built.
yeah, yeah,
600 feet.
yeah, it was big for sure. That was big, and it was not an attractive structure.
Well, Jack Christensen wasn't happy when it was demolished. He thought it was a shame it went down so soon.
Well, I think it was a shame that the taxpayers paid so much to build the thing. And that money was still owed on it when it was demolished, you know, and yeah, that's a subject for another day.
And that's what a lot of
We started on professional sports facilities.
okay. A lot of the writers do cite that as the last large, magnificent thin shell structure.
It could have, you know, I mean, I've heard more than one architect say, okay, gave me 10% more. I could give them a more attractive, you know, and they just, I mean, it was totally utilitarian.
Yeah.
That's what it was. And all the charm of a warehouse.
Yes.
Yes, I had a quick question about like texture. Is there anything that differentiates the texture in the thin shelled? Well, I was interested. I went to the Charles Deaton presentation, and I was like blown away that they use walnut in there, not only to create a texture, but an indigenous something of nature that was put into it that was held a lot of strength. Because, like you're saying, like water is eroding and it's our enemy no matter how it's put up. So I'm just wondering, are there things they put in that to make it even stronger since it's so thin? And could they use something like the walnuts? I thought that was very interesting and fascinating that that's part of that Charles Deaton.
I hadn't heard about walnuts. That's fascinating.
Was it, isn't that what they said at the? Blew me away. I was like, I'm gonna go up there and touch that.
That's fascinating.
I'm looking kicked off, but I could still try it.
Yeah. I'll read comments about, additives being used to improve the strength.
Yeah, but there's nothing like significant that they started back in the 30s when they started doing that. Is there something different than other concrete structures that the thin shell uses to add the strength, or it's just in the structures?
It's in the structure
It's in the
and
the
reinforced.
poles and how they're done is
Yeah.
that's how it supports itself, kind of self-supported.
One thing that did come along later, more toward late 50s and in the 60s, was sometimes using a lightweight concrete.
Yeah.
Lightweight. If standard concrete weighs 150 pounds a cubic foot, hey, we can make it using different particulates. We can make it weigh 110 pounds a square foot. So I've read a couple of examples where like hyperbolic paraboloid shell roofs were diamond shaped, so they had the big swooping tips on each end. I've read where they very carefully planned out and worked their way out using a heavier mix of concrete. And then at some point they used a lightweight concrete to take a little load off it.
And then I put walnuts in there. I don't know where they're getting all these walnuts. I remember saying like that sounds expensive.
Walnut are expensive. Yeah,
So you know what I mean? Right? Just the shells. Just the shells. Like they don't need the shells, right? Maybe you could go talk to somebody at Diamond Walnuts and
Well,
take it off for free.
walnuts use it blasting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
The very expensive sandblasting.
Oh yeah. Oh, see.
yeah, just,
Yeah.
yeah, right. I mean, for like stripping paint.
Yeah.
Right.
In terms of texture, frequently it's just right out of the mold, right out of that formwork. But I'll frequently read descriptions where they say the concrete was rubbed. I haven't found a description of what rubbed meant. Is that like sandpaper or is that
Probably polished, yeah, with something.
Yeah.
Some a grinder or something.
I'd love to find an actual description of here, workmen are rubbing the concrete and see exactly what goes into that. But I've read that frequently, just to kind of put a final smoothness on the concrete.
Yeah, they can stamp it. They do a lot of things now. My uncle Mike has a concrete business, does unbelievable things with stamp. It's still really creative in different colors, but it looks more like it looked like stone and woods, but it's created straight like concrete. It's really cool how it's progressed like that. I just interested to know, like, I think that would sound smart, put some kind of indigenous medium in there that was indigenous to nature that made it even stronger. You know what I'm saying? I think to back it up, that might help with some of those on the side, just the structural component of it, of finding another piece, especially since it's natural. I think that, and then they said up at that house up there, the Charles Deaton house up on I-70 in Golden, that it added a fabulous texture, which I found fascinating. I'm gonna sniff it out, but I'm not gonna tell you what. Just keep on the down.
Speaking of going back to the sports complexes, have you I know that the Milo Ketchum Denver office is for sale currently. Have you been inside that building?
I have, in fact, 2018, I just walked up to the door and said, "Hi, I'm here to see your building." Ended up talking to, I forget the fellow's name, the architect that ran the business at the time. He showed me around, and when they had that building featured in Doors Over Denver, I was their tour guide.
Yeah, he was a docent there, and that's when I met Scott.
Oh, well.
'Cause I met him in that building.
Ah.
But Scott introduced me to this camera, which is his go-to camera, and I bought one.
Tell you what, concrete from the 50s and 60s was a little different. I have a house that's listed right now with the 1956 stamp in the driveway. It's starting to look rough now, but like
It gets
You'd be-
harder as it older it gets.
you'd be far-fetched to find something that old now. You would just 10 years, that's all you're gonna get out of a driveway, I feel like anymore.
Why is that? Because I feel like I wasted $3,500 on a driveway.
I don't disagree. I don't know why. I want to know why.
I got talked into it and I trick myself every time I see that driveway, you know.
Well, I think quality counts in that concrete chain.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you mentioned that. One of the things that Milo Ketchum talked about and Anton Tedesco talked about was the importance in not just drawing up a thin shell building and then tossing the plans over the cubicle wall to a builder and saying, you go ahead. That they talked about the importance of being involved.
Yeah.
You know, you need to make sure their formwork is not only sufficiently strong, but properly shaped and captures the right details. And you need to make sure they're pouring the concrete at a the proper slump and all those details.
I had no objection to the quality of the workmanship. I just questioned the quality of the material.
Oh,
You know, I mean, it's this lighter color concrete. I forget what the hell they call it, but you know, all the others in the subdivision, I mean, a lot of them have been replaced, but the cracked ones, fine, they're cracked. You know, they've been there for 50 years, you know, but
so you know it's
drive off, you know,
It looks-
steal them or something, you know. That's what I could have done.
Dwayne and
It's harder with age.
Yeah.
Dwayne and was the campus architect for, I don't know, yeah, retired yet, for Forest Academy. He said that there's two kinds of concrete in Colorado, one that has cracked and one that will crack. And I don't disagree. But I think like when I talk to people, I think one of my biggest things is that what the problem is, and I kind of talk about it, is that we have everything now is made to cure it more at colder temperatures.
Right.
And also cure faster. So I think whatever it is that they're putting in it to do both of those things, I think is what's changed it so much.
Right.
Because it's just not the same. Like it was, I see concrete that was done 2-3 years ago and it's spalding and you're like, why? Why is it spalding already?
Well, you don't want to put corrosives on it for a long time. I mean, somebody who might have known what he was talking about. But yeah, don't put salt on it.
No, I tell my plants don't put salt on your
You
concrete.
know.
Unless you want.
You see fertilizer. Well, you see commercial establishments got all kinds of spalling because they'd rather pour new concrete than get sued.
Well, our sidewalk, no, that's the sidewalk that my house.
Yeah, we had it 5 years ago. Yeah, it's constant. If I showed you all the listings that I know of newer concrete, it's constant.
Yeah.
Scott, there is a house in Alamosa with barrel vaults on it. And I don't know if it's concrete. I would say it's not, but I know that there's a house with multiple barrel vaults and it looks a lot like that office building that you showed. The barrels running across maybe 5 bays. I'll send you the address. You can have it live. Check it out.
And do you have the Athmar Park Library on your radar?
Athmar Park Library, you know.
I'll send you the address.
Okay.
It was a former church. It's now a library and it has concrete barrel vaults.
Nice. Okay.
And then there's
That's
a build,
you investigating.
there's a building at, what did we say? Sheridan in Arkansas.
Oh, yeah.
That's the plates and we don't know if it's
You know if it's
thin concrete or not, but that's the
I can send you that address.
plates.
Oh, it just occurred to me, there's a building at about 1740 Boulder Street in Highlands that has, it's two buildings linked together with barrel vaults.
Yep.
Here were the offices of the two engineers who helped me with my house.
Oh,
That was 1740 border?
older.
Boulder. Yeah, you can bring it up on Google.
Thanks, Alan.
That's an approximate address.
Okay. Alan speaks, I write. Oh, anything else? Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for your time.
Let's see. Any last minute things? Nothing we need to share? No announcements? All right. Well, can I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right. Meeting adjourned.